Okay, everybody, welcome back to this episode of In the Room with George and Garvin, or Garvin and George, whichever way round we want to put it.
The GGs.
The GGs, the two Gs, yeah, the horses and all that kind of stuff. So we part of the pre-ramble was we were just talking about the small things that can be irritable and upset you and upset the apple cart and throw a spanner in the works, but they are the things that need to be attended to at some point. And quite often, as they say, it's the devil in the detail. What was your thoughts on that, Garvin? You were the one that sort of bring up the sort of it's small things.
I don't. Now, this is the contradiction. What I thought were big things are actually small things.
Yeah.
Only in the last day, I came across someone out there that has big things that matter, life-changing things. Life and death things. Yeah. And I'm going, there's nothing on my current book. No, I might have had a little scope a little while ago and maybe some bit of probing here, there and everywhere to check out and maybe do my bloods. And I was looking for big things and found nothing, thank God. But at the end of the day, small things can become big things. Mm-hmm. But other people have big things. And it's all relative. And this is what I was suddenly realizing when I found or heard about this person. I don't know this person. And it's just a person. And that's the terrible thing about it sometimes. When there's no relationship and things you can talk about people or war or plagues or famine, it's not personal, therefore it's distant. And then you can put it aside and it becomes a little thing to you because it doesn't matter in your immediate circle or your immediate circumstance. But this stepped into my inner circle a little piece through LinkedIn, and I gave it a little bit more importance because I suddenly put away my small things and said, "This is a big thing. Can I help? Can I reach out? Can I help in any way?" And I don't even know if I can, but it became important to me to see if I could just do a small thing that might make a bit of a difference in the big scheme of things to someone else, and therefore I forgot everything else about what I was up to, what my problems seemed to be on a daily basis, or whatever I was dealing with 5 minutes beforehand as being a major thing or piece of information I had to do, or a job, or it just became irrelevant. It became immaterial. It just blended into the background. And I suddenly realized, am I so lucky to only be dealing with really small things and no big thing like that, at the moment. I'm sure we'll all have big things later on, but it suddenly gave me a little bit of perspective.
Yeah, and I think it's those sort of things that start to sort of pop up in our lives that we begin to realize how important life actually is. I think my wife was talking about a couple of her colleagues that she studied with in her profession. And somebody actually said, "Oh, did you know such and such?" He said, Yeah, they passed away last week. And they got this, that, and the other, and it kind of strikes home that you suddenly realize that all the worries that you think you had about all the things that you are supposed to be doing or think you should be doing are in many ways insignificant. It's basically, what do you have? Those are the riches, not the financial riches, but the other things. If you've been working with your relationships, and whether it's your spouse, your kids, your parents, whoever they happen to be, giving them a bit of time to do things and spend time with them, and just give them that time, especially as we're in a world that will run around and just rob you of your time before you know it. And if you're not careful, you can find every single hour is a rush to try and get stuff done, and you're missing the key points of what your life is meant to be all about. I think my wife's beginning to realize that, because she's going down from full-time back to part-time, because she's beginning to realize that those times to go out and meet friends and do stuff are more important than just doing a job. Because we've reached that point in life where most of the major bills are paid for, except for the car and the taxes and the rates and things like that. They still have to be paid. But generally speaking, all the big ones like the mortgage, that's all done and dusted. And all the things that you provide in your life for, like the life insurance, is to cover you just in case one of you happens to be missing or, be taken away out of the picture. you suddenly begin to realize, well, actually, this is the last few years potentially that we've got to spend that time that we wanted to spend with one another, that we never really got a chance while we were bringing up children, and while you're dealing with their situation at this particular time. This is the time to be spending more time with your spouse, and to see if you like them still. No, it sounds tough, but basically there was a reason why you got together in the first time. That was to spend the rest of your life. And all of a sudden you suddenly realize that most of your life has been spent working elsewhere and not being with your wife or your partner or whatever. And now is that sort of time where you need to spend those times when you can, like going out for meals and going to the pictures, or even just going to the park for a walk and having a chat. Those are important times that we're missing if we're not careful, because we are seeing so many people younger than both of us at this stage who aren't here anymore.
Now, life is a culmination of all the small things, it turns out. Not the big things. Big things are not big things. They're small things piled up together, and they make one big thing potentially. That's what I'm thinking now. But life is a big thing. And that's it. And it's made up of small moments. I know, again, I don't know what the measure of a moment is. Not actually, strangely enough, again, on LinkedIn yesterday, an unknown chap wrote a little, a saying to the universe saying, I'm 42. I haven't made it. I don't know. I've done some things, but I haven't made it yet. And I'm going, made what? I don't know my purpose. I don't know if anyone really does know their purpose on the planet. And what is it we're meant to make? Maybe we've come up with a film we want to make, and that might be it for the moment. And we look forward to making it. And when we've made it, I'm hoping there's something else after that. That was not the end game. It wasn't the end itself. And I wrote back to this unknown person. I said, look, I'm 57 and I'm clueless as to if I've made it or what I'm making or about to make, and doesn't matter. It's more that the strange thing is the language of making is a language of creator, and I'm looking forward to creating and making. So making small things or big things and making it, have we made it yet? Or are we making it? And what is it? And it doesn't really matter. I think it's the small things. It's this culmination, and that's what kicked back two sort of little IMs in LinkedIn space. And it was, one is life. It could be, life changing and in a need. And the most important thing to them at the moment was to try and preserve their wellness or what might be left of it. And there's actually, they were both around the same age profile. There's another person going maybe with their health, but not necessarily with financial health or maybe mental health, and going a little bit lost as to what purpose and the measure for someone else as to whether they've made it or they themselves have their own measure as to have made it and making it. And this was in the film industry. And I don't know what that is. And maybe I don't want to ever know what the line is. And can we make it through life? Can we find our purpose? Can we actually have a bunch of small things, and many a small thing, and those small things are moments of life, and that's what I'm suddenly realizing. So I'm happy with my coffees. I'm happy with my chit chats. I'm not rushing off in any mad rush to go to this work, this place, to consume a volume of time doing some other thing that seems important to someone else, but it's not important to me. If we can live in the now, the material now, then it's whatever. That's all we're in control of, is this minute, this moment, and this small thing. So and treasure it. And I'm getting very reflective by seeing what others are going through and where they're reflecting. That it's actually reflecting back, going, you're okay, you've got your health, that's your wealth, and value these small things. And these things are time, I think.
What is interesting is that we are talking about purpose and what are we here for. And I know that very, very quickly we seem to be always there for somebody else's purpose. And I mean that in a way that quite often it's how other people can exploit us. In the scheme of things, there's a system, and we've been developing our own little system, not to exploit people, but But basically, you start to realize that in most conflicts, it's because somebody else is after what you've got and they want to take it from you because they believe that it's worth them having and not you having. And in most people's lives, what that thing is the time that they have available to do things. And we're put under pressure into this idea that we have to be productive. And the more we try to be productive, the more efficient we're told to be. And when we try and work out how is it that we're meant to be efficient, what we start to realize is it's cutting down the amount of time that we spend doing an activity to the point where we can get it done faster so we can turn them over and just repeat the process time and time again. And what you begin to realize is that you're chunking away at your life. You're cutting it down into these small slices that you end up, everything around you becomes that way. And we're only meant to be working 8 hours a day, but that never seems to be the case, because even people with lunch hours, you were supposed to have a lunch hour, that went down to 45 minutes. And a lot of people now are finding themselves spending their hour, their 45 minutes, whatever it is, actually at the desk working and eating their sandwiches out of a box and not really interacting with other people. And there's an environment that my wife was talking. She likes to go for a walk at lunchtime, so people have started to recognize that. But she started to make friends with people that she's working with and appreciates those in the place because of the social interactions that they're doing. That they go off for lunch and they spend time and they realize that they need to block off certain times for working. And the other problem is that if you carry on working through your lunch break, you're not getting a chance to process the information that you're going through. And you may find that you're creating more work for yourself than is necessary. Whereas those breaks, which are designed to give you rest, allow your mind to buffer through all that information that's got clogged up and filter it through. And all of a sudden, when you're not thinking, maybe having a cup of coffee, like you're going down into town, that little walk down into the town, have a cup of coffee, all of a sudden you may get a new idea or a new perspective on how to solve the problem that you've encountered the rest of the day. I mean, I feel that in what I've been doing, it's always been a case of keep on going until you solve the problem. And quite often you just get exhausted. You haven't solved the problem and you're not quite sure what you've learned from what you've been doing because you're just exhausted, because you're not taking those breaks. You're not dividing your day up and realizing, actually, I've actually reached a point where I cannot pursue this any further. I need to take a break. And we need to listen to what our body's telling us when it says, stop, slow down. You know, you don't need to be active all the time. You need those breaks. You need to go off for those walks or have those coffees or go and spend a little bit of time with somebody else. I mean, a lot of people don't think they realize that when you are engaging with somebody and having a conversation, there is a lot of energy going out between the two of you. And you need to recoup from that energy and get a chance to resettle yourself down. Now, in a two-way conversation like this, that we're having a dialogue, it's actually easier to manage because you're giving each other signals of when to stop and start. In a three-way conversation, it starts to get more complicated because two people usually end up having a bit of a dialogue and the third person is out. So they're having to spend a lot of energy to try and jump in there. And then they're kind of class, oh, you're breaking up our conversation. You're breaking up our flow. That energy is going backwards and forwards, is now being distracted in another direction. If you've got a classroom of people, 5, 6, 7, up to 16, or not 30, say a teacher with 30 primary school kids, the amount of energy that they're expelling to try and meet the needs of each individual is unbelievable, which is why at the end of the day, they can be quite burned out. I've been there as a teacher myself. So we don't appreciate that we're actually not machines. We're made of something different. But our lives are being cut up as though we are machines, to the point where they want to insert robots into our place, because they actually have, in many ways, quite a lot of contempt for us as human beings. They think we're just robots that need to just do repetitive systems. And because we're not efficient enough, they're going to introduce these automated systems that cut the human being out altogether. In fact, they want to integrate systems into us that are like bionics or whatever, things that where the computer, the AI can plug into us, supposedly to assist us and make things better. But in actual fact, it'll be how to make us more efficient in the way that we run until we get to a certain point where we're worn out and they need to replace us with another one. And that expendability. So I think a lot of people who are getting to our age start to look at what's going on in the world that they live in. And it doesn't matter whether it's this generation or 2-3 generations ago, or even ones to come in the future. They start to get to the point where they're asking, what's it all about? And what is my purpose? Why are we on this journey from birth to death? Which, I mean, death is inevitable. Some would say that maybe birth isn't inevitable, but we've existed for a certain period, a number of decades, at least 6 decades between.
Well, for death to be inevitable, birth had to be inevitable.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, there's kind of conflict there, because one of the issues that is now starting to happen with a lot of people, and is going to hit us more so than the generation before within the next 20 years, is the concept of euthanasia, where we're actually taken out of the picture. And the issue with that is that, again, it kind of takes away the concept of who we are as human beings, and, you know, that we have a uniqueness about us, that and there is a certain creativity that we should be doing with our lives. And because people have lost all of that, they are starting to feel kind of very frustrated that everything seems to be very instant. Now, I mean, I'm using old cameras. I'm going to show these cameras again. So you know, various range of old cameras. I'm processing film and I'm scanning them in to get prints and things. We're starting to realize that over the last 30 years or more, I've got photographs of my kids growing up. Our kids are kind of going, we haven't got any history of who we are and where we've come from and what we're actually about. And yet through that catalogue of images that we have from birth right to where they are now, we have a history that they could then pass on to their kids. And likewise, I'm sure you'll find with your kids. But with the phone technologies, once you've seen something on WhatsApp or Facebook for a certain period, it's still there, but you suddenly find that you can't get access to it. So this history that you thought you had in the cloud, in the digital cloud of ones and zeros, is gradually breaking up, and we're losing that. And I think that's something that we're all starting to realize, that we need to capture things in what would seem to be an old-fashioned way. That camera I just showed you is like a 1950s camera, still functions, will still do the job I wanted to do, to take photographs. But I have a camera that's 20-year-old's digital one. It's now 3 megapixels compared to the 24, 25. And the camera isn't going to function for too much longer. It won't be around in another 20 years time or so. It'll be gone. It won't be worth anything. It won't be worth anything in the sense of monetary terms. It won't be worth anything in the practical terms. It'll just become sort of something that needs to be dumped somewhere or recycled and broke down to its component parts again. So those are things that we're talking about. They're small things, but they're important things that gives people memories and things to, especially if we're in an age where people are forgetting, and Alzheimer's seems to be hitting in. But I think people are forgetting because they're being bombarded with so much information that they can't remember stuff. And the photographs and images of the past are there to remind us of what things once were like.
Yeah, strange enough, that's great if people are able to want to go on the journey of looking back and see where they came from, all the rest of it. I think an awful lot of people I'm coming across, or the messages out there, or the pleas out there, is they don't know where they are now. They not only don't know where they are now, they don't know where they're going. And therefore, now we can learn lessons from the past and see where we've been, but if those places, weren't great or, weren't documented, then all really you're doing is consuming the now, looking at where you were, and now you've haven't moved.
I'm actually going to argue against that, because one of the reasons why history has been important, and the documentation of history, is because it gives you a sense of where you are now because of where you've come from, which will help you guide you where you're actually going to. If you lose that sense of connectivity to the background of where you're coming from and who you actually are, then you're suffering a form of amnesia, because you can't place who you are in this world. Then you start to think that you're insignificant. And because
I'm going to jump in and go, this is the problem I think people are having, and they're going, we all want, actually, I was talking to someone else only the other day, someone we both know, who was getting had spent the previous day being highly anxious. And I says, about what? I was about the afterlife, about baby being dead. What's going on when I'm dead? Or will I be reincarnated? And will I be reincarnated in a good place or a bad place? Or is this the second time, third time around? Because I've no memory of the past. And if I was here before, and if I believe in reincarnation, so it was a strange conversation, but without even using that as an example of the photographs, like my wife just mentioned, I've 70,000 photographs on the phone. There's no one looking at them. There isn't enough time to even look at them because we're actually using up so many hours to go through seconds and seconds of this unless you're actively seeking it out. Now, it is I do believe, I do agree with what you're saying in terms of if that individual is actively seeking out and there is a history or legacy of photographs taken to remind them of them moving forward and where they've been and where they are now as a measure of distance, then great. But like an awful lot of things, it could be that the other side is, the photographs they'll be telling you, you don't want to know where you were then. It was not a nice place, or it was a nicer place if you're in a worse place now. So again, the measures could be tainted, and actually all that really matters is you're now. And if you stay in the now and you'll find a way of, I don't know about the negative or positive, because it really depends on what you're looking at and what you're measuring, or who was there, lost dreams or dreams to be made. The thing is to make future memories, past. We touched on this many an episode ago, a couple of hundred episodes ago, where we are now, but don't consume it in the past and don't consume it in the future. And this is where I came back to chatting to that guy saying, look, we're now worrying about being dead. We're worrying about past lives we don't know whether they exist or are real or not. And here we are using up a whole anxious day of time we just got pulled into a silo of potential nonsense, real or not real.
No, but the difficulty is that a good majority of this planet's 8 billion people do actually believe in something, a life after death. They've actually they've discovered within themselves that there is meaning in life. And the meaning in life is actually beyond themselves into another world. And whether you're a Hindu, whether you're a Muslim, whether you're a Jewish, whether you're a Christian, those people believe in something that comes after. The Hindus would believe in reincarnation. Christians and Muslims and Jews don't. They believe in this is it. In the sense of this is this life, and this is the testing ground for eternity. Because once we get through this life and we prove ourselves, we're determining in which direction, which seems to be a binary.
I'm going to jump onto that for a second and go, that's back to the now. It's if in all these religions, this is the testing ground and we're here, we're aware of the here and the now. The rest, we believe in, we're unsure. It can be fate or otherwise. All that is real or doubly material is the now. You can bank your bottom dollar on you're here, or maybe in the Matrix, not even too sure. But if we're here,
but one of the problems,
and this is the testing ground, then that brings us back to purpose and how we use the now.
Well, the problem is that when you first said now, which was about 30, 40 seconds ago, that's now become the past. And unfortunately, now that I'm talking, the last time you said now is now also.
But are you using it purposely?
Yeah, I think we are, because what we're trying to do is, and I think that's the reason why your colleague was actually saying to you, the reason for conversation, that we have communication, is partly to do a test to see where we are now. And where we are now is dependent on where we've just come from. And I think that's an important part of the journey, because if we don't know where we've come from, then we don't know where we're going to go forward, because we can become lost. And that's where everything becomes dark in every single direction. If the background has become dark, I know that if we go off and study something, well, actually, one of the things that we're doing is we're planning to make a film. The purpose is, the outcome is not the film. The outcome is the relationships that are developed in the process of making the film, because that's a purpose. Once the film's been made and once it's gone off, if other people want to sit there and watch it, that's great. But its purpose for us is over. So the purpose in creating that item so that people can enjoy it when they need to, or learn something from it, is actually very important. So this idea of developing things where people can learn is a process. If you want to learn an instrument, you won't instantly learn that instrument now. You have to plan a certain set period of time, and you have to invest your time into learning that instrument. Like, for example, I'm learning to play the trombone. I know music. I know lots of stuff that I can do on other instruments. But what my body hasn't adjusted to is how to get my lips ready to blow a sound through the trombone. So I need to keep on practice. I can use all the knowledge that I have, but if I don't practice and spend time and invest time in playing that instrument on a daily basis, then my body won't adjust to its needs to be able to cope with making the sounds right. It's the same with a cyclist. If the cyclist isn't learning how to build up their stamina, they won't be able to cover the distance of the course that they're about to go on. That takes training. We had someone come on to one of our shows that we spoke to them, and they were going to talk about doing a marathon, but somebody else said, you're too late if you want to do that marathon this time next year, because you haven't given yourself enough time to train. In fact, it was something that was going to come in a month's time, I think it was. And they were saying, look, you're more than likely going to kill yourself, because their experience taught them that over their lifetime journey, the way to get to do a marathon was you have to build up your stamina over a period of time to be able to do the goal of 26 miles. If you went on it, you may get so far round, but we've already seen over the last few years people who have died because they didn't prepare properly for that task. We're preparing for the task of this filmmaking, which we're conscious not of the finished film. We know we can make a film because we've practiced it enough times. What we want to do is to make sure that the time that people spend in a week block gives them the experience and the value they feel that they've purposely used that time to enhance their life in some way or other in ways that they won't know until they're actually there.
What I've heard is a period of time.
Yeah.
The course of running, training, in terms of like the marathon.
Yeah.
Then I heard what I'm hearing is a course of time and purpose. Yeah. And the course of time, that's what time is. It's a course. Like you're going to go over the course of time, your time, and your development, your training and purpose is in that journey of time. And you have to be continuously, learning and experiencing and going through it. And that's your job. That's your purpose. Your purpose is to go on the journey and the course of time, your lifetime. And some are going faster, slower, learning more or less. The bits on the fringes of it, it's different for absolutely everybody on the planet. You cannot be measuring yourself by someone else because there's no one set of circumstances equal to another set of circumstances, and you cannot. Even if you wanted to copy someone else, you couldn't. It just doesn't work that way. You have your course of time. It's how you go through it. What's your purpose in it? And it might be learning the flute. I might be playing the guitar. I think hidden in there though is there is this creator element, and that's back to this other chap the other day. Have I made it through the course of my time? Made it? Did I do anything with it? I turned up. I had no choice in that one. I was there. Hopefully I lived it and I lived it well, and I'm living it well, and I can get better and better at living it well. And some people have empathy, and that's the weird thing. I'm seeing them, you have professions that are doctors and nurses, or I don't know if it's trades and professions, but there's certain jobs I couldn't do. But I don't think it's in your veins or your course. You might train to do and have to do or be made to, but it's not your purpose, and therefore you're not the best person for it. Yeah. So I don't know what I'm the best person for, but we all have purpose, and some of our courses of time are shorter or longer than others, and some are very short and some are very long. And but there's a purpose in it, and I know our journey is to find it. But the only way you're going to find it is to keep on trying new things, meeting new people, having new conversations. And it doesn't actually matter if you get to the end of time or your time, whether you succeeded. It's just, what is success? I think it's just turning up and going through the course of time in a meaningful, purposeful way, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. Every individual has their purpose, and they won't find their purpose until they get to the end. But part of that journey is there are a set of rules. I mean, there's a set of rules for everything that anybody and everybody does. The problem is that if you don't follow those rules, and I know a lot of stuff is saying, oh, if you can break the rules, but quite often when you break the rules, there are consequences to those broken rules, and usually it ends up not being so good. But if we follow certain principles, certain ways of living, which I think we're being driven by those principles because we want a good outcome, not a bad outcome. And I think most people want a good outcome, not a bad outcome. It's just that sometimes it's only once they've gone through testing out certain things, they realize that actually that's a bad outcome and I'm not going in the right direction. But it's also affecting me psychologically and physically and spiritually, because that's another aspect of humans as well. And I'm actually destroying potentially other people's lives, and I'm also destroying my lives. So if we start to measure our own, and I think this is the reason why people ask questions, and quite often we're stuck asking questions because we don't fully understand what it is we're trying to do, and we don't quite often know who to ask. We also tend to think that we have to do it on our own, and quite often that's not the case. We can actually be supported. It's just whether we believe in that aspect or not. And part of the journey is to try and test that principle. Is there something out there that we should believe in that is actually guiding us? Is there something out there that is deliberately trying to prohibit us from actually moving forward? Is it the limitations of us as a human being? Because we have limitations, and we have to learn those limitations. That's what part of growing up is all about. Because if we don't learn the limitations that, one, we can't fly, we're not a bird, we could end up having quite nasty accidents. So again, there are things that we need to learn within the environment that we're finding ourselves in. There are basic concepts. I mean, we're writing a script for a film, but when you start to analyze it, most human beings have scripts, stories that they tell themselves that divine what they're about to do and how they're going to do things. Each one of us has the capability of doing anything we want. The problem is, as you've actually just said, is that coming from the angle and perception that we are ourselves, we are prohibited in what we can do, and we have to learn the limitations of that. But having said that, if we can understand that and work with other people, then we can achieve greater things. More things can be done in groups than they can be done on individuals, which actually then takes you back to this philosophy of Plato. In Plato's Republic, he actually sort of teased out with these two fictitious characters. One was supposed to be Socrates, but they basically worked out an argument of how a city or an empire could be built up, because an individual on their own can't do everything. They need support from other people. And once you start to realize all the things that we're doing, you suddenly realize there should be a massive group of people that can support you, and they can then work, and that becomes their purpose. And that's what we've done ourselves. My journey has been, as a filmmaker, I've learned the filmmaking side of things. My initial purpose was to learn the craft. The next purpose was to serve my clients. And after that, once we got to a certain point, it was to serve students, to basically train them up to be able to do a good job. When you realize that some of the systems that you're working under are very prohibitive and don't fully allow people to grasp what it is they're trying to do, then you come to this next stage, because we've got life experiences. Both of us have life experiences. We've tested things out, and quite surprisingly, and what is actually quite fascinating and almost a mystery, is that you and I have come from totally different backgrounds, totally different perspectives. But what we found through communication is that the principles that we follow are basically the same, which allow us to mesh together. We're complementing each other because we've come to that same conclusion. And we've also worked out which bits you should do and which bits I should do to make that come to fruition successfully, which means that we're halving the task between the two of us. When we start to get other people involved, we halve and split that again into quarters and eighths and sixteenths or whatever we need to actually do. And that team of people then have small little tasks that, as a combination, allows the whole complex thing to be accomplished. Those are things that I think are important to look at. And one of the things that you started off with talking about there was you were moved. You may not know why, but something within you, and you'll probably find it came from your heart, reached out to somebody to help them because you felt that their need was greater than yours, and you wanted to be able to give them something. They may not take up your offer, but at least you used whatever power you could to make that offer so that if they want to avail of it, they can. Although you kind of also talked about the worries that sometimes that would bring in, you actually managed to suppress those worries sufficiently to still reach out and carry out that offer, even though you are aware that there are certain consequences of those actions. And those are things that we need to do. There are times when we're prepared to make sacrifices, and those sacrifices are because we believe in the greater good for somebody else that we can offer, and it would be more beneficial to the other people. So that's not a selfish way of looking at it. We do live in a world where I think a lot of people have become self-centered. It's all about them. It's what they can get in life. It's what they can do. And they are actually internally looking inwards constantly at themselves. And what they don't realize is that they're consuming themselves so much that they're actually being self-destructive. When you start to look out and you start to look at other people, and you start to see what their needs are and how you can help them, then I think you become a better person to society, because you're actually nurturing those other people and making sure that they achieve the goals that they may not understand what their goals are. But if you can start them on the little journey of how to achieve small goals, that's the small things we talked about earlier on, then they will be able to accomplish the bigger things, because it's part of that journey. Start off small and gradually build your confidence so you can do the bigger and bigger and bigger things until you get to a point where you're accomplishing what may have initially seemed like miracles for you earlier on, because you're no longer relying totally on yourself. You're actually able to work within a system with other people.
Yeah. What I heard was our purpose is to give.
Oh.
But give what doesn't matter, time, because that's all we actually have.
Yeah.
And no matter what it's dressed up in, it's going to be time to give it, the action thereof. If there's monetary terms with it, still to give it, it's going to take time. It doesn't matter what's in the giving, it's always going to be time. And therefore, you're giving your most valuable thing on the planet, your live stream. So, but how can you take time? You can take other, so if everyone's purpose is to give, then there has to be someone taking. But if you're not giving it to an individual, it's more you're giving to the center, I think. And therefore, it's for the better good. So it's not about someone taking from the center. That's a need. And it's like, I do know there's givers and takers, and there's an awful lot of takers out there. And I believe then, based on what you just said, if you're always taking, then you're inward focused, you're self-centered, and actually you're all consuming. You're consuming yourself and consuming others, but you're not actually free. I think you're consuming internally, where your purpose is to give externally. So I feel it's my purpose to give of time to things, to making, creating, talking, even if it's only creating a sentence. It's to be a maker, to be a creator, to put value in time and be giving of it. And I don't mean to be religious in any way or form, but in the absence of that, if I'm sitting there bored in a room and just internally, focusing on the past or a future that doesn't exist or did exist, then actually you're becoming all consuming and consuming the most valuable thing, that time of now, and I got no value.
And I think one of the things that you've just defined there in the way that you've put that together is you've created value in yourself, because you valued, and you've got something valuable that you want to give, and you're able to give that freely. And that there's education in that as well, because through helping other people, they then are put into a position where they can realize what that was they were given. Because those people that don't want to be takers, but find themselves in a situation where if they don't take what's being offered, the gift that's being offered, their lives can end. I mean, that's something that can happen. One of the problems is that a lot of people say, I don't want charity. I don't want to receive that charity. I don't want that charity. I don't want to be seen as someone that's belittled. And you kind of go, well, no, actually, it's quite the opposite. We actually respect you as a human being. You have a need that needs to be filled. And on your own, you can't accomplish that. And if you're not able to receive graciously the gift that's being offered, you are actually leading yourself to destruction. And that's what often people have. So those gifts that people are able to give, I mean, that's really what this life is about. How much can we give to other people? We need to be careful that we don't burn ourselves out. That's something else that's also important, because we are human. We're fragile as well, and we can be burnt. And if we're used and abused, because those that are givers tend to be used and abused by, as you say, those ruthless takers who are just being selfish. But the people that we're discussing there who are being offered, they're not taking because they're doing it in an ultra selfish way. They're doing it because they have to have life preservation. These other people that are selfishly taking it because they want power, they want money, they're greedy, and they're doing all the negative things of why they're taking things away. But if we can give something that helps people have life, and that's really, I mean, there's something that's quite interesting, because life is about giving. It's not about taking. It's easy to take life. We're seeing that on the Russian front, where the Ukrainians are currently finding that injured Russian soldiers are being captured who were actually injured, not in that wave, but in a previous wave. And so there's a sense of a contempt about human life, and how insignificant it is. But we currently, in this point in time, under the circumstances that we find ourselves in, can offer what little time we have, and quite often we feel that imposter syndrome as well, that we don't believe that we're that important to be able to give certain things. But we have, as you say, the most precious thing that we could give is our time to other people. And if we can help them in whatever problems they're actually having, to help lift them up out of their situation and help them get a better life, that's I think is a gem that we can actually give. And as you say, time is more precious than money. Money doesn't mean anything really, because it disappears so quickly. But that time that we have is precious, because regardless of where we are, it could be now 15 minutes ago that you said now. So we're not living in the now. And when someone else comes to watch this in their now, there's a time shift of when we've actually spoken about it. But this is a record that is very important to allow people to think about what their lives are about, which is where we go back to the history of the photographs that maps out other people's lives and gives them a sense of where I've actually come from. I think that's the issue that most people are having, that they've forgotten. They've not reflected upon how they got to here in the first place. And they're not being forgiving of themselves, because even if you're making mistakes, which we all do, it's from those mistakes that we learn to go on the right path. And I think that's an important part of the journey, is we've got to test things. We've got to see where things don't work. And that takes time. But if we don't put the time into it, we could actually find ourselves to ruin because we've not prepared enough. There does come a point where you have to say, look, I've prepared enough and I need to go on. But at the same time, is if there's no preparation, there's no communication of those preparations, then everything falls apart. You've got to lay down the foundation. And without the foundation, everything sinks.
Now, what I realize is I'm not looking to give time. I'm looking to share time.
Yes.
So the give time means I might be doing some book work for someone else for free or otherwise. No. The time I'm thinking is, if it's my time, I'd like it to be our time, and I'm sharing that time with you, like here and now, or with someone else. I'm giving up my time, and I could be doing something else. I could be working. I could be giving up to someone else, but it's not giving. It's to share that time in a moment, and whatever you're discussing or wherever's going on, or just being there, as I say, in the big scheme of things, it is now valuing that time with others. And I value my time going forward. I'd probably have a mate turn up and have a game of pool later on. That's what we do. We value that hour. We're not interested in the game, even though it's going on. It's the conversation. It's the time away from everything else, the madness, the mayhem, the work, whatever else is going on. And now it's a shared time to have a laugh about the silliness of life, and you can park everything else and they will be going on in the background and you might go back to them. But for the hour, you're away. And then it's a shared time, just getting away from it all. The other, the ones that take of your time, or you have to do. And so if we didn't have to work, and I've had many a conversation with different people that might be monetarily better off, and they don't have to work in my scheme of things in terms of being able to pay the bills, but the answer every single time is, what will they be doing? And their purpose is measured by the work that they're doing, but not that they have a passion for it, but more they haven't had the time to think about what they do with time, had they time to spare.
And I think that's why it's important to talk. I mean, that's the reason why talking therapy is really important. And the number of people that I've had in my room as a counselor, a student counselor, who've basically said that nobody else has listened to me. You're the first person that's listened to me. And then, and I've heard what you've said. That is very important, because we need to share our ideas. We need to share our philosophies, where we're actually coming from. We need to share our experiences, because they become meaningful. If we're going on the journey on our own and we've done these amazing things, it becomes very hollow if there's no one else there to share it with. But doing something together, like, for example, I know England lost against Spain, but there's a team of people on both sides. One who are elated because they won, the other downcast because they kind of lost on that perspective, but they've made some achievements. The other thing that's quite interesting is Armagh is through to the finals in the GAA, and we were watching that. And now there's a group of people making rosary beads, and they're now going to make Armagh colours and start praying for them. So there's activities going on in little groupings that's motivating those people to do things that they wouldn't normally have got a chance to do. We've got old ladies and young people in there who never would have normally got chatting. And for an hour and a half, they get to talk and socialize with other people, whereas they would normally be stuck in a house on their own, talking to the dog or watching television, and not getting a chance to express their ideas. I mean, one of the old ladies, she can't do the rosary beads, but she started to bake cakes, because she's able to offer everybody that's in the group on a Thursday evening something to eat. Now, one of the things that I was thinking of as we were talking was that I don't like social media. I don't like talking on social media if I don't have a reason. But I'm actually sending pictures backwards and forwards to that little rosary group. We've set up a group of photographers doing film photography. I showed the camera earlier on. We're actually sending back little things of what we're doing. I'm processing film and then showing my results to them. We're getting feedback from one another. There are a range of age groups and people with different experiences, some with 40 years experience in photography, some with 1 year or less. And they're all chatting and feel confident that they can, without that imposter syndrome, they're all starting to say, well, we're doing this, that, and the other. And because they're not full of themselves and just sharing the activities they're doing, everybody's learning, everybody's gaining something from it, and they all want to get involved in the conversation. That I'm enjoying. The other types of stuff that you do on Facebook and whatever, I'm not enjoying, because I'm not building those relationships in quite the same way. It's too far stretched. I can't get in the room.
There is no relationship. That's just consuming content, ads. It's like you said, the great thing you mentioned there was there's a social media as a tool of collaboration and reaching out to find common purpose and make real the relationship. Yes. Yeah. But in terms of, streaming advert of sell, buy, consume, and what it's consuming, even just by watching it, is your time, your most valuable thing, then you don't mind investing your time into it if it's through collaboration and with purpose. Yes. But if the purpose is just to mindlessly scroll, then you're lost.
Yeah.
You're losing your most valuable resource to a consuming entity that will, you won't. It's just hours go by. That's the thing. It's madness.
And it's
and again, it's addictive.
Yeah.
And I find it very, very hard myself to extract myself sometimes from it to such an extent I have to turn it off, remove the apps. Now I leave one or two on whereby there is a tool, maybe LinkedIn in my case. Don't need 50 other ones. And I might just go, if I'm doing something and I can reach out and try and find that giving or taking collaboration purpose nature, but even though I'm not the expert in achieving that, but it has happened and will happen again, then fine. I'll invest a certain amount of time in the mindless scroll to find that gem to then make real, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing that I'm beginning to realize as we go through life, because quite often we don't realize, we've talked about this earlier on, but we don't realize how we've got to now. And we don't appreciate what knowledge that we've accumulated and experiences that we've accumulated. And we constantly feel that we have to start again, because that's the system that we're in. And you talked about you get addicted to some of the stuff that's going on, but that's because it's designed on gambling. And so the algorithms are designed to make you get addictive to these systems, so you'll stay on those platforms. And as you say, you're just being robbed of your time, and you're not being productive, you're not being creative. You're just consuming material for the sake of consuming it. And it's also irritating because it's only done in short bites. And the number of times somebody wanted to share something that they'd seen on, like my mum, who was 86. Saw something on Facebook, wanted to share, and by the time she's walked from her room to another room to share it physically with you, it's gone. She can't find it. And she's getting frustrated because she can't relocate where it came from, because there's so much more material that's now built up just in that 30 seconds of walking down the hall. But she wanted to, we have this need to share with other people, which is why the photography is starting to work and why some of the other activities, because they're sharing skills. But in a digital world, they're finding that they're not getting the same, if you like, adrenaline rush. They're not getting the same endorphins or whatever they call them sort of working. You're being robbed and you're feeling dissatisfied. And, I mean, the number of people that would use social media and look at it and kind of feel not better about themselves, but feel worse because everybody else's lives seems better. They've forgotten what their lives actually is really all about. And it's sharing with one another the space that you have, that time that you have to you are being enriched. And I think dialogue, conversations, discussions are really, really important, because that seems to be what the world wants to stop us from doing. Because if we have those discussions, we become dangerous, because we start thinking outside of the box that we've been put into and start working out our own systems. And I think that's what we're doing. And you see that with other people. If they've got ideas that allows them to develop something that is special, that is worth sharing, there are other forces that come into play to try and knock it down, because they see that their system would be ruined, and they want to hog that system. That's where the what they call it, the monopoly thing comes in, where people just want to own everything and guide where we go. And there's future things that we need to be concerned about. I think going back to analog, there's something interesting about that, because what we're finding is that everything digital is being lost. Whether it's lost on your hard drive because it's gigabytes or terabytes, or the hard drive's no longer compatible with the system you're using. There's also internet issues where they're saying that the links are being broken. So there's a corrosion to the internet, digital corrosion, which means that information that should have been there is no longer there. So it's not the big catch-all of everything. So the importance of collecting analog stuff like pictures, photographs, audio, and music and experiences without being recorded. I know we're recording this one, but having a conversation with somebody else that isn't recorded and is part of your unique experience in life, I think there's something valuable in that, because you've captured it with your own eyes and with your own ears, and you've soaked up what's going on. And I think that's an important part of life that we're neglecting, because we're just stuck in this kind of digital age of looking at things on a screen. as we are now, which is really bizarre.
Well, that brings it back to the beginning. It's like what it's really saying is there's value and purpose in all the small things.
Yes.
And I like that. And it's just like, because if you're aware of each of those things and small things, then you're not all consuming. You could be like, talk about the social media again. Most of the time it's showing you something. Look what you don't have. Look what I have that you don't have. Not really look what you could have. It's if you do something, if you go off and do. So you have to go off and do something, buy, whether it be an action or buy or sell or earn some money, et cetera, et cetera. But the thing is, if you weren't looking, you wouldn't have noticed. You wouldn't have been distracted by it. And had you just been more in the now with your own small things, which are big things, which is the moment of time with your family, your friends, eating and drinking. The Pope eats and drinks and does what the bear does in the woods. The Queen does, or the King now, whatever you want to call them. Everybody, there's a leveler that takes away all the material and go, you eat, drink, sleep, make merry, born and die. And beyond that, there's a bunch of small things. And that's the separator.
The thing is that you've said it there. We're born into this world, but we come into this world naked. Mm-hmm. And every single one of us goes out of the world naked. Mm-hmm. So regardless of what physical riches you think you've actually accumulated, they become nothing because you lose it all, and it becomes a headache, and it is a headache for somebody else that follows you. So you're actually better off not accumulating anything, because you're only here for, if you're lucky, 80 years. Do you know what I mean? And 80 years, I mean, I don't know what your experience of life at the moment is, going past very rapidly, and after that, you're gone. And if people, there was a little thing that somebody put up that after 20, 30 years, you're forgotten anyway. So, that means that we're looking at the life in the wrong way. And what we need to do is to start to readjust our worldview on what life really is all about. We don't know how much longer we've got. And I don't mean this show, but just the way the world is going. The most precious thing is whatever time we've got left, to make sure that we use it not to be productive and accumulate, but to make sure that we've fulfilled the purpose that we've been sent here. And I believe that's an important thing. Most people, regardless of whether you're even atheists and things, they still have a purpose in life. There's still meaning that they're trying to get out of this life, and if you believe in the afterlife, then there's an eternal world. If you don't believe in the afterlife and you think that that's it, then you've only got what you've got left between now and the day basically your life finishes. And the other thing is, don't bring about that end too quickly yourself, because you may have missed the point and missed your purpose.
That's it. My purpose is not to have a second house, to do the sort of garden in it, to keep on. It's the strange thing is it's actually distraction. I think you keep on getting things put in front of you, and then you start reacting to it, and you just start doing the administration around it. And what it's doing again is just another method of consumption of that most valuable thing, time. If it wasn't there, you wouldn't be doing that. And then by definition, you'd have more time. And what you could be doing with that is walking the dog, going for coffee, meeting friends, influencing people, creating relationships, all the good things, not all the bad things. So the bad things are just nonsensical admin that I'm actually putting in place for when I'm dead.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I don't know about, my mum's watching TV quite a bit at the moment, and the adverts are about, have you paid off your funeral bills yet? And you're kind of going, no, Mum, don't spend your money on funeral bills now, because that company may have gone bust by the time and so it's a waste of time. But they're just plugging away, trying to remind people, get your things into order so that you don't cause problems. And the best thing to do is probably sell everything.
Yeah, don't worry, someone else will pay. Yeah. My grandfather, I remember him saying, I don't care. I don't care what you do. Give my body to medical science. I said they wouldn't take it. I said, one arm, one leg, one eye, one liver, one lung is feck all use any sort of medical student out there, other than figuring out how you kept on sort of walking and talking and breathing. But it's not, don't be worrying about when you're dead. We do worry beyond how our children will take care of each other and maybe our spouses. Don't worry, it'll be fine. it'll all take care of itself. Be more aware. I think if we take care of it now, then when we're dead, it'll take care of itself.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we are, again, it's back to that limitations. There's only so much we can do. There's no point in getting anxious about things if it's outside of your control. Only deal with the things that are inside your control. And there are certain actions you can take, and other things you just can't. You can't. There's nothing you can do. It's like a little program that we can work on. If you reflect on what you can do and what you can't do, don't worry about the things that you can't do, because they will sort them out, or a solution will pop up. And it may not be you that comes up with a solution. It may be the other person that you have a conversation with that gives you that solution and gives you an idea outside of that perspective. That's why talking is very important. Having those conversations, and talk about silly things. I know it sounds daft, but from silly things or small things, as we were talking about before, become these great gems that turn into something amazing. Most ideas are silly, but unless somebody actually shared it with another person, they can't make it into something.
There's 1,440 minutes in a day. I think I read that somewhere lately. Now I was going, unless you're awake for all of them, you can't really use most of them. Now I know there's AI, there's websites, you can hire staff, they can be making passive ink. There's 1,440 minutes in a day. It's not it's how you use the ones for yourself when you're awake, in terms of each one of those small things, those small minutes. I don't care if you break it into 60 seconds, is a lifetime of potential creativity of God knows what in terms of decision making. You go, use them well. There's only 1,440 in a day. Don't know how many you get each day.
Yeah.
But use some of them for that creative thinking, chit-chatting, and communicating with loved ones or loved ones to be, and not dwelling on the what ifs and the could be's, the should be's that are the highly anxious negatives. They don't warrant that time.
Just a thought that came across my mind. Most people complain to you or me that I'm not spending time with them. Think about that, because that's something interesting. Most people's frustrations and annoyances about their partner or their spouses or whatever, like, is because they're not spending enough time with them, talking and chatting and being with them. And again, if you think about, we were talking about the distractions earlier on, all the distractions that we get take us away from the people that we want to be with. And more often than not, it's being with those people is the most important part of our life.
No. The strange thing is my wife keeps on saying, why don't you go out to work so you can be with me on holiday? So therefore you're going, it's invest all that time to get money, to go away, to have a break and have the minimum amount of time. I'm doing the opposite. I go, I'm not going out to work. I'm here the whole time. She says, I'm sick of the sight of you. So it's a case of you can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
It's about the scarcity factor. But again, there's a needs must. There's people that have to earn it. They have no choice. But again, it's usually on a journey of scarcity to give up one for the moment that's more precious with more purpose and meaning. So, but our journey of everybody is, if we can have that, in more of that, we should really be figuring out how to get to there and what we need to get to try and increase that likelihood in the short term as opposed to the end of our lives.
I think generally speaking, it's interesting because the concept is she wants you to go out and earn more money so that you can be together, but you're actually there, so she's got you all the time.
Yeah,
it's the same. I think again, it's just perceptions that we think we have to have all this
job. You think the way the universe is meant to work is you're meant to use up and consume your time away doing something you don't want to necessarily want to do, so you can have a more valuable moment some other time.
Well, you think about it. In the old days, when people sat around fires, most of the work they did was about 3 hours a week or something. And because they'd done everything that they needed, they could sit down and actually think about the universe and what's going on and contemplate things. And it was more about those conversations, and being with people were more important than being stuck away under a machine trying to, find ways of generating money. Because at the end of the day, isn't that true? Most of the money is so that you can be together with your loved ones, but you're actually with your loved ones if you're not generating the money. It's just that their perceptions.
It's where they want you to be with them. Doing what? when,
I think these conversations are becoming quite fascinating purely because they are becoming philosophical, and I think that is an important part of the journey. If we neglect philosophy, really looking at what is the grand things, whether you're coming from a religious Christian perspective or whether you're coming from an atheist perspective, or you're still looking at what the grand scheme of things and how it all works and what it's all about. We talked about purpose quite a lot during this, but we also started to talk about recognizing the importance of the small things in your life because they probably have more meaning. We also discussed that the most precious thing we have is time. And if we can give time to other people, that's
shared time.
That's shared time. Well, it's shared time, but that's giving. It is that shared time. I think that's the most valuable thing that we can actually do, and our lives become enriched by it. And I think those memories are more precious. I know sometimes people think we lose them, but I think what we experience is stored somewhere and is accumulated. There's a reason why they talk about opening up the books of your life at the end to see what you actually did. So I think that's an important part. We're just doing that. We're trying to get people to look at the chapters in their lives, and all we're doing is offering a chapter in their life to look at the world from a different perspective that may give them insights to help them along their journey. It won't solve all their problems, but it might give them an insight that they didn't think, and they could solve their own problems from that point onwards. So, well, we've actually been talking probably now for an hour and a half or so. Another long one, another philosophical one. So, but I think, yeah, enriching. There
you go. 90 minutes of our small things called time.
Brilliant. See you next time. Bye for now.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.